Good evening, everyone. I think I'm live. Welcome to Words of Pearls. I think I am live. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Words of Pearls. Once again, it's Florencia Chang-Ageda. On YouTube is Flo Chang-Ageda. All right. Today I'm talking about change. For some of us, it's easy. For others, it's not. We do have controlled change. We do have changes that are continuous. We know that change is basically transitioning from one state to another by either alteration or substitution, right? And when it's controlled, it still can be difficult in doing so. So controlled, meaning that you have control over changing your routine, your eating habits, your sleeping habits, changing a whole new look, right? You can alter, switch, right? Or transform your look. You can cut your hair, you can grow your hair, you can change your attire. Some folks have had cosmetic works done. Basically, change, though, is usually for improvement, right? We see changes in our communities, changes. We know that technology changes. Um, there's upgrade with phones, with the speed of which we can receive the access to online doing sending messages and receiving calls, uploading information, so forth and so on, doing research. Um, and so we see constant changes within our neighborhoods. The faces of many of our neighborhoods are changing because where there were houses, they're now high-rise buildings. Even some places where they did have lower two-floor high-rise buildings or three floors. Now they're like 5, 6, 7 in some cases, 50, 20, it all depends. 24, well, what am I talking about? Really, really high rise, like 50 and more. And so changes occur sometimes with or without our consent. However, it's supposed to, as I said before, improve our lives. And sometimes it's not always so. When you think about that, folks who once lived in maybe a two-floor walk-up or a three-floor walk-up are displaced so that 12-floor, 12-story building or 20-story building could go there instead, and they've lost their home, the home where they grew up in, maybe the place where they were born. And when they were born, their parents brought them there, and they've been living there ever since. But now they've been displaced. Sometimes people lose their minds. I once met a lady on the street, and she said, she and her mom were displaced. That the building that they were living in, the mother was actually born in the apartment, she said. And, after their grandmother, her mother's mother passed, they continued to live there. And so finally, I guess the building was sold, and now that's all she knew. That's where they were. And, with apartments having the cost that they are now, we know the cost of living has gone up. So the prices of rentals have gone up as well. And so, just the worry and everything. Her mom passed and she couldn't handle it. She couldn't deal with it. And her being left alone and now being displaced, not having family members to assist her or anything like that. She, turned to drinking and, whatever else she said she turned to. And so she ended up on the streets. So sometimes the changes that occur are not really about improvement for some, right? For some, it's not. You think about like altering changes sometimes when things happen, an illness or something, and it alters one's lives. People have met in accidents and their lives have changed in a way they never expected it to. Yeah. But the thing about it is, no matter what happens in life, as human beings, we know that change can be difficult. As I said, even when it's something that you have control over. I remembered watching a video of a young lady that a stylist had cut her hair, and she went back to the stylist to change her hairstyle, but this time without the chop. The first time she asked the stylist to chop off her hair, and the stylist did. And when she saw it, she broke down and cried. And I remember one of my sons who had his hair had grown all the way down his back, when he was a child, toddler. And so before sending him out to school, preschool, that is, I decided to take him to get a haircut. And I spoke to him and I told him, you're a big boy. You're going to go to preschool. There'll be other kids there, and this will just be easier, because of course, most of the time he didn't want his hair in a ponytail. So he always had it out, so it was just all over the place, just down his back. And so I was like, so you're gonna get a haircut, and I showed him pictures of kids, who had little boys who had haircuts, and he was like, oh, that's nice. He liked it, he was like, okay. And let me tell you something, that was a very heartrending day for me, and here's why. So the change was supposed to help him, I thought, to fit in, with the students. And I took him to the barber. The barber spoke to him. And so you're here for you. This your first haircut? He was like, because he could talk, and he was like, yes. And he's like, are you ready? And he's like, yes. And he was happy and laughing and giggling. And he actually was quiet. I stood by him, but he didn't wiggle his way out or anything. He sat there, and the barber, he was like, wow, he's such a big boy, gave him a lollipop afterwards, and, great. And we're like, great. And then he saw his reflection in a mirror that was in the barbershop, because they also had beauticians in that same space, on the other side. He looked across and saw this whole wide mirror and looked and said, Mommy, who's that? And when I tell you, I'm glad the barber had cut his and made a plait, cut the plait. So today he has that. But when I tell you, this child squealed, and he was not a happy camper. And I felt so bad. I was like, maybe I should have waited till he was older to cut it. In that one instance, I had just so much regrets, right? But and as we were walking home, whenever he'd pass by stores, he'd look, and then the tears would start again. And so I took him out, I took him to the park that he loved, and I took him out as well. And just to try to get him to, you know, and people would say, well, why are you crying? And I said, he just got his first haircut. So people were trying to encourage him. I remember one lady gave him some money, and he was a little bit happy. And then, as soon as he saw his reflection again, it started all over again. But the thing is, as I said before, even sometimes with us, when we decided, like that young lady, she was going off to college, and she said she wanted her hair chopped off. She wanted a new, a change, something that was manageable for her while she's away at college. And then she saw herself. and she broke down in hysterics, the stylist said. So this time when she came, she was like, "Do you need a cut?" No, she came and said she wanted a cut. The stylist thought better of it and said, "You know what? How about I just do something with your hair to make it seem as if it's shorter?" And she did that, and she was quite pleased with the results. So, um, that was a change that she could accept. As I said, it can be difficult. However, while it's difficult, it's something that we have to find whatever mechanism it is to cope with the changes that are occurring around us, whether it's globally. We see climate change. That's something we have no control. Well, we see global climate change. There are things that are outside of our purview of, that we can have control over. We see our changing neighborhoods with high-rise building going up. Not a lot of people, some people didn't want that, right? We see sometimes certain businesses will come into neighborhoods that folks did not want. And then sometimes businesses come into neighborhoods that brings in revenue into the neighborhood rather than take it out. In some cases, when the business is there, the monies that are spent there does not benefit the community itself because it goes outside of the community. But in some cases, it does. And there are always give and takes when it comes to having changes occur. Um, but it's something we learn to cope with, right? Based on what it is. Well, but we have to realize that we are on a journey in life. And the journey that we're on does not require us to become stagnant, to stay still, right? It does not. So, whether the changes that are occurring around us, we feel comfortable with them or not, we like them or not, we're part of the decision making for them, you know, whether or not we in life changes will occur. No season remains the same, even in climates where it's just hot, right? Or it's just heat. There are rainy seasons, and there are dry seasons, right? So we know it will change from one to the other. There are days when the sun is out and all is bright and cherry, and the next thing a change occurs, and there is uh, dark clouds. There are times when we know we have, like here in America, the four seasons: this winter, summer, spring, and fall, right? And we know that we enjoy the spring and we enjoy the summer and we enjoy the fall, and then comes the winter, which most people don't enjoy. But then there are those who appreciate the winter for the snow, so they can go skiing or sledding or, whatever games or activities there are attached to that they can do. And there are folks who like having on the parkers, the winter coats, and then there are those who don't, right? So if you're one that like to have less clothing on, you probably prefer the warmer weathers, right? And warmer weather when the seasons are warmer, right? But as I said, we were not created to be stagnant, to be at a standstill, to be sedentary. We don't sit all day. It's not good for us, right? It's not good for our bodies. It's not good for our blood to stay sedentary, to lie in bed all the time. When folks lie in bed, the bodies can develop pressure sore. For those who are ill, to lie in bed and not be able to move yourself, you'll develop pressure. Even people who are moving around, if you have to sit a lot, or depending, you can develop pressure sores, as well. So we were created to move forward, to go forward, and to improve our lives. We do not stay stagnated, right? No matter what it is we're doing, even for many folks after working at a job, some folks change jobs simply because, yeah, after they get to a certain place in life, they it's like a plateauing, and so they move on and they will change jobs just to not be stagnated, not, and sometimes after folks retire, they get active, they get busy, they do a whole, some do businesses, some do hobbies, activities, things to keep them going, right? And this is something because we were created to move. We are creatures we are humans, and we were created to move, right? Just like you have animals, animals are supposed to run around and hunt, and so, if you have a cat or a dog and that's indoors and they're gaining weight, they're not going to want to run or move around. But if you take your dog out and, or if sometimes things happen that even cause them not to be that agile anymore. But basically, we're all created to move. Plants never stay stagnant. Our plants don't sit there in the pots and not grow. They grow. They grow even when there's stubbles. I just Bishop Anderson gave me a plant recently, and it had two stubbles. And I felt led to give my friend whose husband's going through a difficult time to give them the plant. And I did. And the not only the ones that were growing have more leaves, but the ones now that the one plant came up out of the soil, and then there are the two that had stubbles, had a leaf coming up out of one, and the other is coming. So I just say this, that we can learn from nature. Nature is not at a standstill by any means. And so it's when we start thinking that way, if we start thinking, you know what, changes will occur, maybe then you can have more of an input to the changes that are occurring around you so that you'll be better able to deal with those changes. But in any way, know that changes are there for improvement. And so be part of the change, be part of the decision making, and, you know, then you can benefit more from the change that occurs around you. With that being said, I pray you have a wonderful weekend. Know that I do love you guys, and God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit loves all of us so much more than we can ask, think, or imagine. Alrighty, so with that being said, I'm going to take a quick look to see if anyone is watching, and so that I can give you a shout out. And as I said, this is also on my YouTube channel, which is Flow, FLO, Chang-Ageda. So if you go there, if you have someone that you would like to uh, share it with, you can go there and share. So let me see now. Sorry if anyone's on. Oh, well, one person, four people. I don't know who you are, but hi, hello. And I hope you will share this as well. All right, so have a wonderful evening, everyone, and know that you're loved, and know that changes are occurring around each and every one of us every day. Whether some we can see right away, some we can't, some we see in due time. Even our bodies change. All right, as we age, things change. So you can be part of the change by making wise decisions about whatever changes are occurring, right? To help you. All right, take care. Have a wonderful weekend. Blessings.